Man, I have a really exciting episode for you today on the REI Marketing Weekly. I have my good friend Clifford, the Cowboy Closer Walker. And yes, he is the Cowboy Closer you're going to see. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you'll see he's wearing a cowboy hat and everything. But super, super awesome guy. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about heavily is cold calling. Now, in a world where you have half of real estate investors that are doing, motivated seller marketing, are doing cold calling, the other half are not doing cold calling. And there's very few and far between. Now, the people that are doing cold calling still, that I've been talking to and I've been hearing from, says that it still works and it still works well. But there has been some shifts in it. There's been a little bit of a change to it. So on the episode today, Clifford talks about how to connect with sellers on a little bit more of a personal level. Now, you're going to get from the podcast episode the way that Clifford is. He's a little bit of a homegrown, down-to-earth human being, very, very super kind, very personable type person, and he's more interested in spending more time with the seller on the phone with them or in person, talking to them and developing a relationship and figuring out how he can help them, as opposed to just trying to use sales tactics and techniques and stuff like that to kind of force them into the sale and that sort of thing. And that's just the type of closer that he is, right? And for a lot of people that are listening right now, maybe you're not like that quintessential salesperson, and maybe you do value skills and techniques, which I believe no matter what space that you're operating in, whatever profession or your job is, you definitely should be honing your skills in and that sort of thing. But on a very kind of frank level, when it comes to sales and closing motivated seller leads, a lot of times the person that gets the deal is the one who was able to understand and connect with the seller at the deepest level. You'll hear people all the time say that it wasn't even a price thing with the seller. It was just, did they feel like they were being helped out of their situation and their specific needs and that sort of thing. So Clifford dives deep into that, and he uses cold calling to connect with people. And obviously when it comes to cold calling, a lot of people that I, talk to and that sort of thing, maybe you're listening to the podcast and you're like, man, I don't like cold calling because I don't like calling 1,000 people a day and getting, 90% no's and hang-ups and that sort of thing. It can be really diminishing to my morale and stuff like that. And listen, I get it. I've done it before and it sucks. But Clifford today is going to talk to us about how to kind of get past those roadblocks and make sure that you're pushing through aggressively, but also connecting with people and making sure that you're building relationships. So at the end of the episode, we do also talk about Clifford and how you connect with him. He does offer a free kind of giveaway for you, so make sure you do take advantage of that. And he puts out a lot of really great content, especially on his YouTube channel, which we'll tag in the YouTube description of the YouTube video that goes out here. So make sure you do go check out his channel and all the content that he puts out. So you're going to really enjoy this episode. Clifford's a really great guy. Love having him on the show and being able to kind of pick his brain. So you guys take notes and enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler. And today I've got my good friend, Clifford Walker, the Cowboy Closer, rocking if you're watching on the video, rocking the cowboy hat. It's on brand. Clifford, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, doggy. Happy to be here, brother. Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor and a privilege to be here. I mean every bit of that. So I'm excited about this time with you.
That's awesome, man. I'm really excited to have you as well. So for you guys that listen to the intro, I met Clifford at a mastermind called Family Mastermind. And right off the bat, I was just highly impressed with the ability that he has to instruct what he's teaching. There's a very rare talent that very few people have in the coaching world. And Clifford, you probably know this too, that like sometimes it's like riddles when somebody's like telling you to do something or teaching you how to do something. And I think you have a very unique gift and ability to be able to kind of contextualize things, but like summarize it, but also make it like very actionable items. And that's based off of the conversations you and I have had, but also obviously like you have a lot of content that's out there and I've seen a lot of it and just doing a good job. So I'm really excited to dig into some really, really important things that real estate investors need to learn about today. And one of those things is cold calling. So before we hopped on here, I had kind of a set of things that I wanted to run through with you, but on my list was this, but you specifically said, we're still doing cold calling, where a lot of people are kind of moving away from it at this point. Talk to me about that. Like, what is this like the primary focus that you go into? What type of results are you still seeing? And what are some of the reasons why you haven't gone away from it?
For sure. I absolutely love cold calling. So when I got started with this, I cut my teeth on cold calling. And it is just an old school method that is tried and tested. Like, it works. It simply works. Does it suck? Yes. Most people do not like cold calling, but it still works. Yeah, it still works. I think like any form of marketing, it does require volume, consistency, and follow-up. But no, I absolutely love it. And I have everybody start with cold calling. It's a great way to cut your teeth and get your reps in and just really sharpen your skills.
Yeah, and those skills typically, those are going to be talking to sellers, right? Like those are the skills that need to be developed, because if you're going to buy a house from somebody and they have 20 other investors that are sending them mail pieces and cold calling them, a lot of that has to do with like the connection point that you make with them. So how important is that? Like, what are some of the mechanisms and the things that you teach people and you do yourself, more importantly, that when you get on a phone call with a seller, let's say it's the first time that you touch base with a seller, what are some of the conversations that you're having when you get on that phone with them?
So for me, when I'm talking to a seller, I'll first, I think, let me kind of sum this up, and I hope I'm not going to go too far left field, but I hope it makes sense. I truly believe what we're doing when it comes to real estate investing is we are building generational wealth by serving other people, by serving them. We are talking to a lot of family members who are in a very tough season in their life, meaning like they're going through divorce, or they're going through a foreclosure, or perhaps they just lost a loved one and now they inherited a house, right? So they need somebody to come in there and pray with them, not pray on them. And so my angle that I take when I talk to sellers is, how can I serve you? How can I help you? Because when I take that approach, it relieves any pressure of me needing to be some grand closer. Like, I'm here to serve, and I'll say, hey, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, I'm here to see if I can help you in any way. If we're a good fit to work together, great. If not, that's great too. I'm here as a resource for you to help you any way I can through this season in your life.
Yeah. That's incredible. I love that statement you made. We're praying with them and not praying on them. I think, like, here's the thing, man, is, and you know this better than probably I do, but when you're talking to these people, it's interesting that you bring up the fact that, like, they're going through a season that isn't like generally something that everybody goes through. There's like, they have a certain thing. We call it a motivation, right? Like, we call it like, what's their motivation, that sort of thing. Internally, we can continue to say that. But I think externally, when you look at it, and you have like these different types of closers, right? Like, you got those people that teach closing, and you have all these tactics and methods and everything to kind of like draw them in and then get them sold to in order to work with you. And I do think that some of that stuff's important. But to me, if you take those same tactics and you implement the mentality that you kind of just talked about, how can you beat that? Like, there's no way to beat that. If you lead with this, but you're using this with the tactics, but you're leading with your heart, it's like, how is that possible to beat? And you agree with that?
Yeah, it's hard to beat. Like, I'm with you 1,000%. That's how I try to approach it. Like, of course, I want to sharpen my skills. I want to get a little bit better, and work on those things. But it's always leading from my heart, like truly with a heart to serve. Like that has been, I believe, the key to what little success I have has been because of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's very, again, on brand for you, and that's something that I know Clifford teaches, but he also lives that for sure. And like, I've only met him a couple times in person, and just that's how he is. And I think it's a personality trait too, right? Like, again, you have those closers that we see on YouTube and social media, and they have podcasts, and they're just like stern, like closers that are very direct, type mavericks and that sort of thing. That does work. Like, don't get me wrong, but there's certain ways to do things in business, and there's certain ways that like are right and wrong, but maybe both of them get you results. So it really depends on the way that you want to run your business, essentially, is the way I look at it. But for you, so what are some of the things I'm interested in this whole cold calling thing, because this is something where a lot of people are teaching to go away from it at this point.
Yeah.
For you, what are some of the things that you believe people are doing in their business with cold calling, if they are doing cold calling, that maybe you see are mistakes that they shouldn't be making, or some of the don'ts that they're doing in their cold calling? Or maybe it's somebody's just getting started and you've seen what they've done. What are some of those don'ts?
I think the don't is, this is probably going to go against the grain as well. I'm not scripty. Like, stop following the script. Like, I get it. You have to have some type of framework, so to speak. I get that, but I'm not a scripty person. Like, throw that out of the window. You are dealing with true people on the other end of that, right? So if I come on here and I sound like a robot, right? Like, nobody's going to resonate with that. So be your true, authentic self, I think, is the key there when it comes to cold calling. Also, remember, again, it's a volume, and you have to have quite a bit of volume, and you also have to follow up. You need to remember that this is a cold call. You're literally calling somebody, cold traffic, and say, hey, would you be open to an offer on your property? Right? So they're probably not going to be the most motivated, but you have to nourish that lead. You have to follow up with that lead. Just because they're not motivated today, well, we don't know what's going to go on 3 months from now, 2 months from now. And you'll end up creating like a snowball effect.
Yeah. So talk to me about some of those ways that you're following up. So if somebody, let's just take, for instance, it's easy to follow up when somebody says, sure, I'm interested. Give me the details. They talk it over, and then I'll call you back and make sure you follow up with me. Those are easy, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that picks up the phone and says, like, screw you, don't call me again, forget my number, that sort of thing. People teach like, hey, there's gold in the follow-up. What are some of the things that you're doing with follow-up in order to be able to get some more deals in the pipeline, even after somebody says no the first time you talk to them?
So if they say a hard no, like, don't take me off your list, don't call me again, it'll probably be like at least a month, or I would say 3 to 4 weeks before we call them back. And it would sound something like, hey, Josh, this is Clifford. I was giving you a call. I know we spoke a few weeks ago or a month ago about your property. What did you decide to do with it? Were you looking to sell? Like, just super casual, super casual. And then you would say, no, I didn't want to sell. You can take me off your list. Okay, bud, I completely understand. Give me a holler if anything changes, though, right? And boom, I'm adding you right back to the follow-up 4 weeks from now. Yeah. And the conversation is going to sound exactly the same.
Yeah, no, I got that. And then if somebody, let's just say somebody is like, they're not motivated at the time, but let's say, for instance, they didn't give you a hard no. Are you following up with them, say, like on a bi-weekly basis, or what does that process look like?
Typically, yeah. The follow-up will be quicker the more motivated they seem, right? And so if it's somebody that says, hey, yeah, I'm actively looking to sell, we're probably going to follow up with them every week. Somebody that says, yeah, but maybe not right now, maybe 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Somebody that's just a cold, no, not looking to sell, it could be 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. I don't really have a set system there. Like, we just plug it in by how we feel like the conversation is going.
Yeah, because every situation is going to be different. I mean, I do think that there's value in following a process and a system, but it needs to be kind of moldable and constructed to the lead that you're dealing with, right? Like, exactly. Is that the way you carry it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But then too, I'm not a very system person.
Yeah. But hey, listen, I heard a wise man once say, if a yellow legal pad works for you and that gets deals, then you follow that, right? And I think that there's certain kind of like qualms about that. However, like, there's some truth in it. If there's a certain system, like, obviously there's always room for improvement, but if there's a certain way that you do something and it works and it's there, it's not a situation of like, if it's not, broken, don't fix it type thing. Yeah. But if it works for you, then cool, use it. But
sure.
Use it.
It's funny because like, even in the family mastermind, like, some of the the people system there, I'm like, they're running like a full-blown Ferrari system. I'm like, they're turning and burning, like they're going. Mm-hmm. And I just have my diesel system, simple truck, 4x, like it just runs. That's all I need. As long as it just runs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, I mean, a lot of it depends on the size of the amount of leads that you have, right?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
You have just an absurd amount, like you're in 20 different markets and, you know, you're bringing in 1,000 leads a day and that kind of stuff. Yes, you're going to need a Ferrari. You're going to need something that's super robust, super like intimate and that sort of thing. Like, but if you're, you know, working in a smaller market, especially if you're in a secondary or tertiary market, the systems are going to be slightly different. And this is where I always come in and say, like, if you're marketing or doing sales or even running your business in general, like you can't just take out of the box what somebody's teaching you. You have to really construct it and mold it to your specific business model, right? Like that's important to understand.
1,000%. And actually now, I don't know where maybe majority of the listeners are at, but if there's somebody that is just getting started, you're going to hear a lot of the top gurus and speakers, and they're going to talk a lot about the systems, which is good, but focus on just the marketing. Like, get the marketing down, and let's get you closing deals first, right? I like to share an analogy. So many people are trying to build this Ferrari of a system when really all you need to do is put wheels on the cardboard box and you need to get rolling. Like, let's generate the income first. Let's get the deals coming in first. Let's build that out, and then we can worry about all of that extra shiny stuff.
Yeah. It's hard to kind of like, you know, there's so many people out there where it's like they're putting the free content out, right? They're putting the podcasts out, they're putting out YouTube videos and social media, and you insert yourself into a certain video that you saw of them talking about their massive marketing budget, and they spend $100,000 a month on marketing, and then you just get so overwhelmed with that. But remember, maybe they put a video out like 4 weeks ago that talked about how they got started, and they started with like $100 budget and stuff like you missed that part, right? So there's always things that you missed. And that's why I always say, like, don't just take exactly what they're doing and implement it. Like, you have to make sure it's contextualized to what you're, you know, kind of working on. And one thing I kind of wanted to pivot with you on, staying kind of in the cold calling realm, is we're kind of on the verge of, like, you know, comparing yourself to other businesses and that sort of thing, or even just looking at what these big gurus and coaches have and what they're talking about, and then wanting to leap from where you're at all the way up there just because they're talking about what they do in their business. Mm-hmm. For somebody that's getting going, when it comes to cold calling, it could be one of those things of like, they're not entirely sure. I see people run into this a lot. They're not entirely sure how much time to spend on cold calling. It's like, because obviously, like, if you talk to people, you're going to spend more time on the phone with somebody, you know, here, and then the next call, maybe it's a quick answer and then a quick hang up. And, you know, there's that variation. When you're advising people on getting started, how much time do you really tell them to spend on cold calling, say on a daily basis? Like, what is that kind of, let's call it a time budget. How does that work for you?
I would say if somebody's just getting started and they're trying to get some deals, I would say they need to be doing no less than 15 hours a week. No less. Like, you act, and I'm talking about actively on the phones, actively doing marketing, actively reaching out to sellers, not spending 15 hours creating a business card or company colors or company logos, right? Like, that stuff isn't typically going to get you paid. You need to actually be talking to sellers. So I find that 15 hours a week is a sweet spot for people part-time getting started where they can actually get results. When I got started, I was cold calling like 10, 11 hours a day. Like, I was cold calling like a madman. Now, my situation was a little bit different because I hated my job. I hated what I was doing, and I needed to change that. And so I was willing to sacrifice whatever I needed to get things rocking and rolling and to change my current situation.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at cullermedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode. Yeah. So that's interesting with context. So if somebody's like in a corporate job and they're working already 80 to 90 hour weeks and they want to get out, like you got to know your own schedule, right? Like that's important. So if you're working a 9 to 5, you tell me, like, when are prime time hours to call? Is it during the day? Is it after hours? Is it weekends? Like, what does that look like for you?
It's all, I haven't noticed a major change. I really haven't. I think it all comes down to consistency because we were experimenting with, just calling in the mornings, just calling in the evenings, weekends only, different things like that. And we realized that we would get leads all of the time consistently if we were consistent. Because we have to also think about it, or at least this thought popped in my mind. Most of the people that we're reaching out to are having a hard time. So they're probably actually unemployed or they're not working. So they're going to answer the phone anyways.
Yeah.
So no matter the time of day, they're probably not working. So just call them.
That's interesting. Wow. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's important to understand and realize, right? Like they're going through something like that. They're probably taking some time off, or like you said, unemployed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And it's either way, like you said, maybe they lost a loved one. They're taking some time off because they lost a close loved one, and now they're trying to situate those things. Maybe they take some time off for a divorce. Like that stuff can be very hairy and crazy going through those things. So they take those breaks to go through that. So I think just whatever works.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'm glad we talked about that because I've actually never really asked about that before with somebody. Is like, what does your scheduling look like with cold calling? Because I feel like sometimes that can be important, but for the reasons you gave, that does make sense. And contextually, that can be really valuable for somebody that's wanting to get going. And if you're already cold calling and maybe you're not having as much success as you feel like you should having, make some of these variations, and this should be able to help you. So kind of some of the last conversations I want to have with you are kind of pre the phone call. So we need to know who we're calling, right? What type of data are you collecting in order to be able to get the phone numbers and then call them? Like this is kind of marketing 101 when it comes to real estate wholesaling especially. But if I'm cold calling and I need a good list, obviously the list is kind of, that's the golden goose, right? Like we want to make sure that that's pumping out really good data so that I am calling good people, right? And like the motivations. So talk to me a little bit about what you're building on the data side in order to be able to set yourself up for a successful cold calling campaign.
So for me, I always start with like the pre-foreclosure, tax delinquent, and probate. Like those are always going to be my top 3 go-to lists that I pull every single month specifically. We'll skip trace those and then we'll use it. And then sometimes I'll just pull stuff by the county and just play around with different filters to try to create motivation. Like maybe I'll pull something where maybe they're an out-of-state owner, they have an adjustable mortgage, right? Like interest rates on houses went up over the last couple of years. So let me see if I can find somebody who now whose mortgage has shot up and now they can't afford the house. So I'm just kind of playing around with different filters, but I'll always pull those 3 list type as like my basis.
That's interesting. So for those who aren't really familiar with that, why those types of motivations specifically for you?
Just because it's an obvious problem, typically, right? Pre-foreclosure, that's an obvious problem. Tax delinquent, that's an obvious problem. Probate may or may not be a problem. It just depends, because a lot of families now, they're selling these houses. I mean, Forbes did a study that I think it was 78% of Americans live check to check. So if we have 78% of Americans living check to check, and then now they're just struggling to maintain their own household, and now they lose a loved one, and they just got dumped this burden of this house. Maybe it's a rough house. Maybe it's an ugly house. Who knows what's going on here? They rather sell that house and be done with it versus trying to dump money into it and figure things out.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, it's good to know. I think that there's some kind of hidden details in there that people don't really think about when it comes, especially probate. Like me personally, I have a client that we work with where he only markets to probate leads. Like that's the only type of deals that he does, because it's such a good, like, first of all, like he has a similar method of like approaching with, empathy when he's talking to these people, because they're going through stuff. But it is a really, really good niche list to go off of, because of, A is the frequency, but B is the motivation is a little bit higher sometimes, and they're wanting to get rid of the property for the reasons that you gave. So that's really interesting to kind of talk about. So then what kind of data providers are you utilizing for pulling those lists?
PropStream.
Got it.
Yeah. They've been around forever.
Yep.
It's classic. It works. I'll say this though, and this kind of gets me a lot with new investors getting started. They put too much faith in platforms like PropStream or Batch Leads or something like that, right? As long as you're getting 80 to 90% good data, like, you're fine. Like, there's no platform that is going to give you 100% accurate data every single time. Like, we pull the data, we skip trace it, and we call them. That's it. I don't even check the pre-foreclosure date. I don't. If it's on that list, we'll pull it and we'll call them. Yeah. Because I've realized that the number one place to get the most accurate information on any deal is directly from the seller.
Yeah, that's good.
They're going to tell me what's going on with that property. Yeah. They're going to let me know how much they owe, if they're in foreclosure, when the date is. I don't have to trust PropStream. I just need them to give me the address and the information so I can go and do the rest on my own. So
yeah, and you're going to hop in and do the work and talk to the people and figure things out, right? Like, yeah, it's excellent.
But I'll even say too, I know we talked a lot about cold calling. I do some other marketing like PPL as well. And I know that's really hot right now.
It is. Yeah.
It's really hot right now. But here's the thing, and this is specifically for new people getting started. That can get costly. It doesn't take much to start spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000+ dollars a month in those forms of marketing. It's very easy to do. And so you want to practice on something like cold calling, because now is not the time when you're spending $5,000 a month in marketing to be practicing on leads. Like, you need to work through your jitters. You need to fine tune your style, your approach with sellers, work on that quality conversation that you need to have with sellers. Like, and I think, again, that's why I'm a big fan of people cutting their teeth on cold calling, because now if you can get those skills down, when you're spending $4,000, $5,000+ dollars a month in PPL, now you can really maximize those leads. Like, those aren't the leads to be playing with.
That's good, man. I've never even thought of that before. Because like PPL has been like you said, a really hot topic. And I think that's something that it's tempting, right? Like
It is.
it's already a lead. Like I don't have to like, market for it and all that. And then, like you said, it gets expensive. But if you've never talked you still have to talk to the sellers.
Exactly.
You still have to close the deal. But no, that's really good advice. I think if you're listening right now and you've like not had the experience of talking to sellers before, or maybe you're like kind of still in that phase of where you are cold calling and you're talking to sellers, like I would encourage you to like fine tune and craft your, we'll call them sales skills for lack of a better term, but your ability to talk to those sellers before you go to PPL. I do think that PPL can be really, and for those of you who don't know what PPL is, pay per lead. Basically, it gets you teed up for, there's a organization that does marketing already, brings those leads in from the motivations, and then you can buy that lead from this, platform that is selling the leads, and then it's already teed up for you, right?
It is.
But I think that, it's a really good way to kind of go about getting deals. But like you said, I mean, still got to talk to the seller, and still got to make sure that you're taking care of them. And if you can waste a lot of money, right? Like
You can. I know because I've done it.
yeah. That's a really good tip, though, man.
But I would say too, and not to get off the topic of marketing, but I really believe the secret sauce is communication.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think many of us, and I'm probably guilty of it too, share the importance of fine-tuning your ability to have quality conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because communication doesn't sell. It's not sexy. If we told all the listeners, hey, we're going to have a podcast about communication, there'll be 2 people on there. It'll be you and me. That's all.
Yep.
Right? But that is what is going to actually get you the deals closed, because people only do business with people they like and trust. That's it. The only 2 reasons, right? So you have to get them to like you and trust you. And that takes time. It takes skill. It takes effort. Like you said, lead with your heart, but you're also using your head and having some framework about the things that you're saying. So I would highly, highly encourage the listeners to spend time fine-tuning those crafts. And I'll tell you a funny story here, if I may. I was so shy and introverted when I got started. My wife would even have to pray with me before I started calling, or before I would go into like networking events. That's how introverted and shy I was. And so what I would do, I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but hindsight's 2020. I would work or watch like a sales training video and say to myself, okay, I need to practice this so I can get good at closing deals, so I can eventually start getting deals. Like, I never started with the mindset of like, let me hurry up and get a deal. It was weird because it was like, let me learn how to talk to people so I can start getting deals and I can start making money. Yeah. But somewhere along the way, I just got a little bit better and I actually started getting deals.
Yeah.
But that was my mindset. I would literally watch like a Chris Voss video and say, okay, I'm going to practice this all week. And every day before I started my day, I would play that same video every day. And I'm like, this is what I'm practicing. This is what I'm practicing. And people just aren't willing to do that, or they don't think about doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good takeaway. I think there's a time and place for learning stuff, right? Like there's a time and place to read a book or to listen to podcasts, but what we're talking about is actually like taking that and implementing it, like actually doing something with what you're learning. This is the whole like debacle with going to college right out of high school and stuff like that. It's like, that's a little bit of concept here, right? It's like, if you are only studying and only like consuming, but you're never outputting, that's where you're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to waste time. You're never going to see results. And like Clifford said, he just got on the phone, started cold calling, started talking to sellers. He sucked at it at first, but then he started getting good because it's the practice over time, no matter what. And one of the things I want to go back to really quick, I'm going to make a really quick statement and then we'll wrap up here. You talked about, you even said, I don't want to go too far off marketing, but dude, I would argue communications is almost all marketing. Sales and marketing is communication. If you are marketing, that means that you're communicating a message that you have a solution to solve a pain point for a seller. And if you're selling a donut, right? Like there's not really a pain point, but the person has a craving for a donut. So you're communicating how you can curb their craving by eating the donut that you made at your shop, right? Like there's that kind of, it's communication. And then the sales is now like when you're on the phone with the seller, the communication portion of it is literally almost 80 to 90% of what happens in a sales process. So I just think that that's something that people absolutely have to dial in and get focused on. And no, it's not sexy, like you said, it's really not. But if you don't master communications in marketing and sales, you're not going to succeed, especially because of, like, we're talking specifically about wholesaling. Wholesaling is only a marketing and sales business.
That's it.
That's literally all it is.
That's it.
Do it. If you can't market and you can't do sales, you're not going to be able to wholesale.
No, so that is it.
That's it, dude. But man, Clifford, this has been absolutely a fire episode. So much great content that's within here. Hopefully we were able to help somebody today. I think we really were. But I want to give you the opportunity, if somebody really wanted to connect with you, I know you put some good content out there. We're going to have all that linked in the description below, Instagram and YouTube as well. But if somebody wanted to connect with you, maybe they wanted to learn more about working with you in some way, shape, or form, what's the best way to get connected with you and make that happen?
Definitely follow me on social media and YouTube. I'm really pumping out a lot more content on YouTube right now. Even for the listeners, I can send you, have like a free PDF that I can send them, a 5-step guide to getting started with wholesaling. I mean, that's free. They can have that, and I'll send you the link for them for that. But definitely just follow me on social media there.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Send me that, then we'll have that link down in the description below, guys. But Clifford, this has been a fantastic 30 or so minutes that we have spent together. I know a lot of people are going to get value out of this, and I very much appreciate your time. Look forward to having you back again soon.
Absolutely, brother. It was my pleasure, bud.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. And if you do me a huge favor is to leave a review if you haven't already, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And additionally, make sure you go check out my YouTube channel that's linked down below, because putting out a lot of great content that talks about marketing, but also content creation, which is what I'm a master in as well. So make sure you go check that out. Lots of great content there. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.